Not tracking on a keto diet is a huge mistake. Eventually, it stalls weight loss and can even lead to people feeling like keto doesn't work. And so, therefore, you end up quitting keto. When we don't track, we have no idea how many carbs we've eaten, and therefore, we have no idea if our body is in a ketogenic state. That's really important for multiple health things. But I think the worst thing that I want to point out is that we can't even problem solve why we're having cravings if we're not tracking. And this gets totally overlooked by most people. Tracking can be intimidating, I would say, because, well, most of us hate failing, first of all. And if we don't really understand how to track, we go over 20, we're going to be beating ourselves up for that. We're going to feel like, especially if we don't lose the weight. So tracking can seem intimidating, and we try to avoid it at all cost. Many of us aren't even sure if we should be doing net versus total, and then so we need to keep in mind that what gets measured gets improved, right? We need to be looking at what we're actually doing. We need to verify that carb count if we're going to make the best decision for our health. So I want to start off by saying that both net and total can absolutely work. Both can be successful. But I wanted this conversation to help you to see why you might choose one over the other. And first of all, I want to know, guys, what are you doing? Or what did you do to start your lifestyle? Did you start with total net? Let me know in the comments. I'm kind of curious. But we're just going to start this conversation off with carbohydrates because I want us to understand what they are. So carbohydrates, sugar, two words for the same thing. All plants are carbohydrate based. So every processed food is carbohydrate based because the base of processed foods, especially ultra processed foods, are plants. So right away, if you're eating ultra processed foods, you need to understand that very likely your carb count is higher than it should be. So I'm going to make the big assumption you're watching my channel. Highly processed foods are out of your diet. But if you still have some snacks, now we're talking about those keto snacks and treats. We're going to talk about that later. But if we have a large amount of carbohydrates coming in, that raises our blood sugar. So this is the reason that anybody would be even looking at a keto diet or very, very low carb diet, or in extreme cases, well, I'm not going to call it extreme. In many cases, we'll go carnivore because they're trying to decrease blood sugar and they're trying to re-regulate their insulin levels back to normal. A lot of people do this because there's extra weight on their body. So when you eat high carbohydrate, your body will store those carbohydrates away as fat because that's the healthiest thing to do with carbohydrates when they first enter your body. Then that fat storage can be used at a later time. Because if that carb was left in our blood, so that sugar was left in our blood, that glucose and fructose and galactose and whatever oses, like however you want to call this stuff, was left in our blood, it would cause damage to the body. So our body puts it away. It's what it's supposed to do. Your body's doing the right thing. And then the other piece of the puzzle is that there's inflammation that happens when we have large amounts of carbohydrates, sugar coming into the body. That causes illness. And so that's another reason that people will start their keto lifestyle. That's why I started my keto lifestyle. Talk about that more later. But the reason that most people are going to start all this is that, right? So I want to talk about the simple sugars first. Things that our body can easily turn back into glucose. So we have things, and fructose and lactose, but those simple sugars, like when our body's easily able to break things down into its components. So we have things like fruits, we have things like candy, unfortunately, and things like milk. These are easy for our body to flip back over into sugar, and therefore really easy for our body to store, first of all, but extremely easy for our body to fight with and have them like raise our blood sugar, have a lot of glycation happening in our body. So damage to the body through sugar. And so this is why those simple sugars are kind of hard for us to manage. They taste fun, right? And a lot of people love eating them because they taste so fun, but they are hard for the body to manage versus these complex carbs. So now we're talking about, the lentils and the potatoes and the beans and all the what are called healthier carbohydrates. And they're seen as healthier because it takes our body longer to break them down. It takes our body is able to slowly incorporate these into usage. And so they're seen as better for us. And of course we have the fibers, which is the other thing that's going to come out here, is fiber in the body for some people, and some kind of fibers for some people is not actually broken down. And so there's a belief that that fiber then just passes through the system and helps us to eliminate. Now, I spoke to Lee from Kent Carnivore, and his experience of eating large amounts of fiber was that he had a lot of inflammation. It was causing problems in his digestive tract to the point where his colon was removed, because what he later learned was that it causes damage as it's passing through. So the fact that it's not being broken down is actually damaging. So mechanical damage, Wellness Warrior. This is the piece of the puzzle that I think I was not aware of. And he pointed out that there's actual mechanical damage that's happening on top of the fact that inflammation. Now, there's a question mark though, because some people can break down fiber that they thought wasn't able to be broken down. So you might actually be getting the carbohydrates out of some of that fiber, which again goes back to the blood sugar issue. And of course, the lovely sugar alcohols. Now, again, these are not supposed to be sugar. They're sugar alcohols. But what happens to sugar alcohols in the body? We cut off the extra, I think it's a hydrogen atom or whatever the atom is that's on it. We cut it off and bang, it's sugar again in our body. So that's one problem with it. Another problem with, and if you're talking about not just sugar alcohols, but artificial sweeteners, because we will use these things believing that they don't have a carb count, and so therefore they're harmless. They're not harmless. Wellness Warrior. What we need to understand is that these sugar alcohols and these artificial sweeteners that we're having do impact the body. And they have different effects depending on different people. There is now a lot of belief that especially the artificial sweeteners are causing cancer in some people. So that's a whole other conversation. But my point is sugar alcohols are in our food and they need to be accounted for when we're trying to do total carb versus net carb. So, what is net carb? What is total carb? The complete amount of carbohydrates in anything is the total amount of carbohydrates. And then to find the net carb, it really sounds like a simple process. in my belief, it's not so simple because you need to remove fiber and sugar alcohols. And I have two problems. So I'm going to be very, very honest with you. When I started my keto carnivore journey, I was using net carb and I wasn't even doing it right because I was subtracting fiber, but I didn't know that you still needed to also subtract sugar alcohols. And then now my big question is, how do we subtract sugar alcohols? Because they don't normally list them on the packaging. So I was removing the fiber, but even at that, I don't know that you would be able. So we just take for granted the net carb number that we're told. That's what I was doing. I was using my phone and I had my chronometer app and I was just believing whatever net carb number they're telling me. But now for every product, how much sugar alcohols are in it is going to vary by the company and how much sugar alcohol they put in their formulation. So if I'm using, let's say I'm using a name brand food, but, or so I'm using in my calculator, a name brand food, it's going to remove the sugar alcohols because it's tracked. But let's say that I didn't actually buy the name brand. There might be more or less sugar in the food I'm eating. And so probably more because the name brand is going to likely use more of these fancy things to get the best taste than this off brand. And it's probably why it doesn't taste as great. And then, but that would mean that the off brand might have less sugar alcohols, maybe no sugar alcohols or the name brand. So they're going to give me a much lower count so I feel like net carb has problems, right? I feel like it's complicated. And I feel like for most of us, we're not going to know how to get from that, 18 down to 12. Well, or 19 down to 12, or how did they do that? And basically it's supposed to be that straightforward math calculation. So if I show you on the actual packaging, like it's a straightforward 33, right? That's the total carb. And if we were using total carb, we would stop there. There's 33 grams of carbs. That's what I'm using in my calculations. If I'm doing this, I'm going to subtract 2, right? Because that's the fiber that I see. You know what I didn't do, Wellness Warrior? I didn't go in and see like, what would my calculator have told me? I should have done that before this, but let's do it now, live, in real time. Because I don't know, maybe it's going to show me 31. Maybe there aren't any sugar. I don't think there's sugar alcohols in this particular food. Because this is Cinnamon Toast Crunch that I grabbed. And I'm not sure if I don't think so. Cinnamon. But what? Toast? So. Okay, so there are sugar alcohols in it. So here I would get 31 if I do this calculation directly off the package. But in the actual calculator for the same amount, 41 grams for the same amount, it's saying it's only 30. Now, that's 1 gram. It's not a huge deal when you consider there's 30 grams in this. Well, maybe it is a huge deal because that's maybe 3 grams because we know that you never have one serving. 41 grams of this cereal is not that much. Matter of fact, you're probably having much more than one serving because it's not that much. So instead of putting 33 for every one of those, you're going to put in 30. So even if you could end up losing a lot of that carb count as you're actually having a real serving of this, because nobody eats 41 grams of this cereal. Like the box would last you forever. So I just want us to truly understand that it's important for us to even know how to do these calculations. Now, let's add to this that there's 11 grams of added sugar in Cinnamon Toast Crunch that doesn't really get spoken about that much. And I think it's important for us to put our mind around the fact that these cereals, like they're not differentiating total. So the natural sugar that would have been in the original food and the sugar that they're adding. And all of this becomes really complicated when we're looking at it from the perspective of total versus net versus whatever. Because I do think that for the majority of people who are eating for health, we want to know where the sugars, and we want to believe that what we're eating is healthy. Now, another thing I'm going to point out is that stuff like maltodextrin that's shown on this packaging, it's even sweeter, it's even more like a higher glycemic index than actual sugar, despite the fact that it's not sugar. And it's not a sugar alcohol either. So we wouldn't even know that this is something that is in there. And we wouldn't be taking it out because we don't know what's in. So again, problems that I see where total versus net isn't the only thing that we need to worry about in this stories. And so this is why I want us to be less concerned about whether we're doing total versus net in the sense that they both can work. But these little things has a huge impact on your blood sugar because it's impacting the glycemic index more than sugar. It's not going to be in the sugar count. So how much of this is in the product, we don't know because it's not listed in the sugar count, I don't believe. But it's impacting our health. So when we're troubleshooting and we end up having cravings, although with this kind of product, it's obvious we're going to have cravings. But even with another kind of product that has maltodextrin in it, and that's the reason I use this one, because I saw that on the label and I was like, wow, most people don't know how impactful maltodextrin is on our blood sugar. And let's say that I was being very mindful, doing my keto way of eating, and I had 4 squares of this, so a low enough amount that I know it's not going to put me over my 20. It still has maltodextrin in it that's hitting me harder than the sugar that's in it. Not to mention, if you look at the ingredients, how many times in different ways do they have sugar, golden sugar, fructose, dextrose, rice flour. So there's so many products that are sugar. It's frustrating, Wellness Warrior. And I want us to understand the impact that this has on us when we're trying to eat for health, but we're faced with these kind of products. So, before we get to that picture, I want to just talk about the fact that I did my entire weight loss process and maintenance doing net carb. And I want to remind you to I'm reminding you, okay, the reason I'm reminding you is if you're new here and you don't know my story, I had a hip problem. And by the way, I'm Violet. Hello. And I started keto in order to solve my hip problem. But before I started keto, that was me. I was 80 plus pounds overweight. Right? This is in 2017. My hip started hurting me by the end of this summer, my hip started hurting me. It wasn't the horse ride, by the way, that made it hurt. That was am I getting that wrong? Did I go riding with my hip hurting me already? I might have gone riding with my hip hurting me already, because that's the kind of craziness that I would do because I wanted to live my life. But in 2017, or maybe I was just having a good day on that day. But by 2018, anyways, I had started my keto lifestyle. Or maybe this is when I'm going to have to double check the date of this. But anyways, that's pulling me in now. But the reason I'm showing you this picture is because I was living my life. And I'm also showing you this picture because I was where a lot of you are now. And it's important for us to understand that we can change this. You don't have to stay there. But if I don't know that net carb versus total carb, and I don't know which one to choose, and so then I just don't track at all, which is what a lot of people do. They just don't track. Then you're not going to get results. If I didn't track, I don't know that I've gotten these results because at the very beginning of my story, I wasn't tracking. And at the very beginning of my story, I kept having pain coming back and I kept, right? And it wasn't until I really understood I need to know exactly what I'm eating so that I actually get to and stay under 20 that my health, like my progress really started to take hold and I started to heal. And by the time that my pain was gone, I wasn't at my goal weight. That's really important for us to understand because my joint pain was severe enough that I was having trouble doing simple things like stepping up on the curb and like, so this is part of the reason that I'm questioning the date that I have on there because I took it out of, but I took it out of Google. So I might have just had a good day. I did have good days once in a while and then wouldn't be able to walk very much, which is the history of my life though. So why am I surprised by this? The history of my life was from the age of 23, when my joint issues began, I would be doing an activity, especially when I was older, like in my 30s, when I had my daughter and she wanted to go to the park and she wanted to go to the jumping place and she wanted to go the tree-to-tree climbing. Well, that was me at first, but then she did like it and we would go often. When we would do these activities, ride her bike, just go bike riding. The next day, I had to recover. So there's no guarantee that the next day after this that I wasn't like seriously writhing in pain because my hip was killing me at that point. But I still went and I still did it. So I was living my life, pain or no pain. Why? Because I knew that that's what I needed to do. And if I wanted to be happy and healthy, well, if I wanted to be happy anyways, I wasn't healthy at the time. I just need to live my life. Fast forward to starting my keto diet, right? In 2018, April. That date I remember because a month and a half before that, I had even heard of keto for the first time, and which would have been back in like February. But 2 months, 3 months before that was the first time since I started skiing back in my 20s that I hadn't gone skiing at least once in the winter because I couldn't. There was no way that I would have been able to control myself. And by that point, I was longboarding, by the way. There was no way I was going to be able to control myself going down a steep hill on a longboard, feeling the way that I was feeling. I just knew. And if I fell, I wasn't even sure what was going to happen. And then I found keto, April 20th, 2018. And as you can see there from the look on from my face, I had already started to lose weight. But the reason that I put that picture in, and it had happened before that, but I don't have many pictures of myself because, well, most of you kind of know the story of like when you're overweight, you're not jumping into pictures all the time. And I still had this mentality up until this point. I had this mentality of like overweight Violet. So I would take lots of pictures of the kids and the activities we're doing and whatever, but I was rarely in the picture unless Pat took a picture, which is how you got that picture of me on the horse, because Pat took a picture of me. So now what? June, my hip is fine by June, by the way. When I'm taking this picture, you could tell in the background that I'm out. We're actually by the water and we're just walking through the trees and whatever. And my hip is fine by that point. It took somewhere between a month and 3 months. So I'm not exactly sure when, by the time Pat asked me, I was already feeling better and I couldn't pinpoint when it actually happened, which is one of the interesting things about life. We get used to things. So being in pain, and then we get used to it. Like we just don't even notice when something stops being painful. What we do notice is when the pain comes back. So my birthday, and then September 8th, the reason for this picture is because That's me at goal weight a mere 5 months after I started my keto lifestyle. And all of this I did doing net carb. I got to the place in my life where once again, I'm doing my activities easily and my weight has regulated. My hip, by this point, by September, I'm totally knowing that I'm going to be snowboarding again. Oh, wow. I have the dates wrong. I put 2019. They're all supposed to say 2018. Sorry about that. That's me doing a typo. They're all supposed to say 2018. I typed those on today or yesterday. So just for clarity, it's not a year later. It's months later. Now, hitting my goal weight in 5 months, that was a bonus. I wasn't actually even thinking I was going to gain weight. I started doing keto and I did it net carb because I didn't know any better. So I'll be honest with you. I just looked at the carb count that Chronometer gave me, so this app, and assumed that that was the number to use. I only found out much later that there was such a thing as total carb. Even though I should have probably known about it because I kind of had watched Dr. Westman's video on total carb and net carb, but it didn't click to me when I actually started it because I watched that a month and a half before I started the diet. And then when I was doing the diet, when I just saw the carb count on Chronometer, I used what it showed me. So net carb works. And you want to make sure that you're staying within the numbers that we're being told. So even if you're doing net carb, is 20 grams of carbs or less. I want to point something else out. When you're doing a keto lifestyle, you might hear the number 50 grams of carbs or less thrown around. And the reason that I want you to think about it more from a perspective of 20 grams rather than 50 grams is that the doctors talk about it being 20 grams because that's the benefit that they see people get from doing a keto carnivore lifestyle. If a keto lifestyle, if you're above 20 and you came to this because you had weight to lose, or you came to this because you had some kind of physiological problem or mental health problem, 50 grams of carbs is enough sugar that it's still going to keep you chasing. It's still going to keep the issue happening because it's still too much for the body. So even though a healthy person who doesn't have weight to lose and is metabolically fit and is psychologically fit can do 50 grams of carbs and be in a ketogenic state. Matter of fact, I've heard Dr. Gillespie talks about being in a ketogenic state as something like 70 something, but that's because the body damage was not as much as the rest of us. So at least that's my understanding of it. So because of that, we're talking 20 grams of carbs or less. Now, of course, there's a lot of benefits to doing net carb. And I think one of the big ones is that you still get to eat some fun stuff. There's lots of keto treats that we can purchase or make that taste fun and allow more flexibility. I'm going to say this, and I'm totally transparent here. At the beginning of your keto journey, so if you're new and you're looking to start and you fell on this video because you want to start, doing net and having the ability to keep some fun things in your diet, if that helps you to stay on track, do net and keep those fun things in your diet at the beginning. But I really want every wellness warrior to be focused on getting to the place where I'm only eating real food: meat, fish, poultry, eggs, low glycemic vegetables if you're doing keto. Why? Because That's what's healthier. Processed foods are processed foods. They are lesser in quality than whole, fresh foods, than the meat and the stuff that we pick ripe off the tree. Processed foods have chemicals in them. They have their actual nutrients stripped away to stop them from spoiling, which is something I learned that blew my mind. You're taking out the parts that spoil, but the parts that spoil are actually the healthy parts for us. But then still calling it the same thing, that shouldn't be allowed, but it is. So it's important for us to understand that even though removing fiber and removing like all the things that make processed foods fun and tasty and whatever, and even doing net carb and taking the fiber out because we can't process it. Sorry. So just all these different ideas that we have about eating net and allowing us to keep fun things in our diet, it doesn't mean that that's good for you, Wellness Warrior. So those snacks often send us chasing, right? Because those snacks, even though like all the carbs are there, right? So those sugar alcohols get broken down in the body and get turned back into sugar. For those of us who can actually metabolize fiber, we are getting that sugar. So it's impacting our blood sugar. And we need to understand that. So I want us to be really, really careful about how we are allowing companies to tell us that, because I think that's where the net came from. I don't think it's just doctors not wanting us to count the fiber or the sugar. I think it's companies finding tricky ways to make us think that the sugar is less than it is. And the fact that they will put carbohydrate as 33, as we saw in that one image, can I get back to it? But as we saw in that one image where they put carbohydrate, let me just go back to that image. They put it as 33, but then they put sugar as 11. And they know that when people turn over the package and they're looking for how much sugar is in this, and they see the word sugar, that's where their eyes are going to go. They understand that you're not going to go, oh, 33 carbohydrate, because most of us don't realize that carbohydrate and sugar are two words for the same thing. And even for those of us who know it, like myself that did sciences in school, when you're out in the normal world interacting in normal language and you see on a label carbohydrate and sugar, your eyes just go to sugar because that's what you're looking. How much sugar is in this? And you read the sugar number. So I do want us to really just understand that there's more to this than just not wanting to do net or not wanting to do total. I don't think it's that. I don't think that we came into this avoiding total to avoid total. The other thing that I want to say is really misleading about food labels, and is frustrating to me, is that the government allows companies to say that anything that's 0.6 grams of carb or less, or 0.6 grams of anything or less, is zero. First of all, in school, in math, I learned that 0.6 rounds up to 1, not down to 0. So why they're allowed to do this is to trick us, Wellness Warrior. Because when you look on a label, and the best example of this I have is heavy cream. When you look on the label and you do a serving of heavy cream, it says 0 grams of carbs. However, if you stop and think about it, how many people actually put 15 mils or grams, I can't remember what one it is, but I think it's grams of heavy cream in their coffee? Not most of us. Most of us are going to do, or in whatever product they're putting it in, because you might be baking with it. And if you're cooking with it and it just calls for 1 tablespoon, okay, that's 0.6 grams. But if it called for 2, we're right away at 1.2 3, so we're over that 1. And if it called for 4, right, we're at 2, 6. That's almost 3. So I really want us to understand that these little places where they're saying, oh, I can put 0, spice is another good example of this, where yes, if you use a serving of their spice, you're going to have like 0.6. But how many people are going to use a serving? When you're spicing meat, even for one person, I don't use a serving. I wasn't using a serving. Even if I look at salt, I don't use a serving. I use more than a serving. So like you're going to get more. And I'm not saying salt has sugar in it, although some salts do. If you take salt from fast food restaurants, so those little packets, if you ever bring those home, be careful, there's sugar in there. Which, again, why? To pull us in, to make us chase, to make their food taste so deliciously yummy. Like those French fries don't have enough salt on them that we needed to add more salt. Enough sugar on them that we needed to add more sugar. But there we go. We add sugar and salt. So fast food restaurants add salt, add sugar to their salt. But these ideas, Wellness Warrior, if I don't know that spice that I'm putting on that's 0 carb isn't actually 0 carb, and I'm loading it up, and then I'm chasing later, and especially, let's say I was carnivore, and that's all the carbohydrate that I put on my food, I'm confused, right? I don't understand, why am I chasing? I'm chasing because the carb count still came to more than my body could manage. I'm going to talk about that. Should I talk about that now? Before I go over to total carb, I want to make this point. Because on net carb, I did see where 20 grams of net carb stopped working for me. I didn't switch to total carb. What I did was I decreased the amount of net carb I was doing. There's a reason that I decided to do that, and I'll point it out to you right now. I did that because, I still wasn't certain on what was making that difference. And I was eating all whole foods by that point. So I wasn't certain. Was I eating all whole foods at that point? No, maybe I was still having desserts once in a blue moon. So I won't say that. But I believed that net was good enough. And so I went from 20 to 18. And I saw that that's where I started to be okay again. And all of my previous calculations were done net. And since I was far enough in that I was very committed to using the app that I was using and I like the foods that I was eating and my understanding of the foods that I was eating, I wasn't eating any fruits, the vegetables and meats that I was eating, I wanted to keep my stuff looking the same way and just understand what I needed to do differently. So I didn't switch to total. But you have an option, because let's say that you're eating net and you want to switch to total as a potential solution to solve a stall, right? Maybe I'm stalled, or maybe I'm just not losing. Maybe I'm doing net, but it's just not working for me. Maybe I don't know how to calculate it properly, and I don't have an app that's calculating it for either or I don't have an app to calculate. I don't like putting things in my phone, whatever the reason is. Doing total is so much easier. You look at the box or the package or the whatever, the number's the number. You check when you're doing, so in Chronometer, you just need to switch it to total. The number's the number. And most apps allow you to switch it to total. This is helpful because it stops us from having to do mental gymnastics and math. It can help you to break through a stall because now it's just all the carbs coming. So we're not playing the game of added sugar versus we're not playing the game of like fruit sugar versus, no. Any sugar is sugar. I'm counted. All carbohydrates count. And I want us to understand that is such an unlock for anybody who's struggling, because all carbohydrates do count. Even the carbohydrates that are in meat, naturally, because meats do have a little bit of carb, because we're eating muscle meats, right? That's where they store the glycogen. But also, those spices that we put on our meats, or the, it's so hard to completely avoid getting carbohydrates in unless you always eat at home. So if you're always eating at home, you're not buying a coffee, because I heard in the US they add sugar to coffee, like without, like just black coffee is black coffee with sugar in restaurants. I heard that and I was like shocked, because here in Canada you have to ask for sugar. But maybe you're living one of these situations. And if you are, then just doing total can help you to see where the issues are coming from, because that's what you need. Wellness Warrior, going back to the beginning of this, if you are not tracking, then how can you problem solve? What gets measured gets improved. That's how I figured out for myself that 20 grams of carbs wasn't working for me, because I was going so good, so good, so good. I'd lost weight. I was feeling great. I was at goal. My body was working perfectly. Well, as perfectly as it could after what I had lived for 23 years. And then all of a sudden my pain came back. And I was still doing 20. And my pain came back. And you know, it helped me to understand something. 20 is not a goal, Wellness Warrior. 20 is the maximum that doctors say that the typical person with metabolic problems can eat to get into a ketogenic state. But if I understand that 20 is not the maximum, or sorry, the goal, it's the maximum, then am I actually letting myself understand that the lower I am, the better? The further away from 20 I can keep myself, the better? Well, I'm letting myself understand that. That's why I'm carnivore right now. Are you letting yourself understand that? It's the same way that when we were in school, 60 in Canada was a pass. But you're not aiming at 60. You want to be as high above 60, right, as you can be. If you can get to 100%, terrific. Well, if you could get to 0 grams of carbs, terrific. What are you doing when you're looking at 20 as the goal, as the, I'm trying to get like just under 20, like I'm just going as close as I can, but not cross it, is you're keeping your eyes focused on eating the problematic stuff rather than allowing your eyes to be focused on eating the healthy stuff, the meat, fish, poultry, eggs. If I let myself focus on the things that don't come with high carb, and you notice I'm not saying dairy every time I'm saying that. Dairy tends to come with more carb, right? Meat, fish, poultry, eggs, that's what you should be focused on as the healthy part of your diet, right? Because if you do that, you're going to get your body back. And I want us to get our body back. Are you doing the activities that you want to do? I love sports. What do you love to do, Wellness Warrior? What is this extra weight holding you back from doing? Is it going out to the movies? Is it visiting with friends? Playing with the grandkids or the kids? Art? Are you not able to do your art because you're painful in your hands, or you can't hold the brush, or you can't mold the clay? Put it in the comments, please. What would you be doing with your body if you were able to heal? And total carb versus net carb, it makes a difference that you are at least tracking. First of all, please track. But also, that 20 grams is not a goal. How far below that 20 you need to be and how you're tracking it, you will determine for yourself which one makes the most sense for you. But I want you to prioritize your health over the taste of fun. I want you to track because it's going to empower you. If I know what I'm eating, if I know how much sugar is coming in, if I am deciding rather than hoping, all of us want to do this intuitive eating thing. The thing that we're not letting ourselves fully understand is that it's not possible for us to intuitively eat anymore because, and here's the big unlock. When we were younger and we were trying to intuitively eat, spitting out those fruits, spitting out those vegetables that our moms were putting in our mouths, gobbling up the meat, gobbling up the low glycemic vegetables. That's what I remember from my daughter. She loved the low glycemic ones. Our parents kept pushing those sugary things in our mouth. We are trained on sugar. Our intuition now, today, is saying sugar. We cannot just intuitively eat until we retrain our palate to crave meat, fish, poultry, eggs. And it takes a little while. It doesn't take forever. I'm 6 years in, and I can tell you that July of 2018, we were on vacation, and the very bland strawberries, according to Pat and the kids, were too sweet for me. I couldn't do it. That's April, May, June, July. That's 3 months later on this warrior. So we can retrain our mouths and possibly reopen ourselves to that intuition that lets us get in touch with how much carbs should I be having? Now, I believe I'm back in touch with my intuition because my body is telling me none. It's telling me none. I'm so happy with the way that I'm eating. I do not miss carbohydrates. I don't miss plants and processed foods in the slightest. I think that's because I'm back in touch with my natural, intuitive, what my body wants me to have. Are you going to let your body get back to that place where you're prioritizing your health? Because that's what your body wants you to do. That's why when we give our body good, healthy food, it heals us. Your body wants you to be healthy. Right away, it heals you when you give it the right stuff. Are you giving your body the right stuff? And if you are, what positive benefits are you seeing from that? And I want you to hit subscribe because every single Monday, my goal is to inspire you to eat real food and get healthy. And if you're already subscribed, I would love it if you share this video because it actually does help. You're going to give it in front of more people, but it also helps for me to be able to make more of these videos, right? The more people see it, the more of these videos I can make. There's a playlist that I'm linking to help you get started with keto and stick with it. So you're going to click on that after this video. Wellness Warrior. I am just so happy to be here with you guys. I want to jump into the comments. I see there are a few. If you have questions about net carb, total carb, or anything else, I'm so looking forward to talking to you guys. Set apart A, hello. Thank you. This makes so much sense to me as you speak about the fiber part. It seems as if I bloat with everything I eat, including broccoli. Let me just put myself in the... Okay. Including broccoli or spinach, romaine lettuce. I'm carnivorous now. Love it. Set apart, can I also point out that in my interview with Sally Norton, she pointed out that spinach is a place where we thought we are going to get so much calcium, but spinach actually has the opposite impact. It blocks our body from getting access to the calcium that we're trying to get, and apparently very, very toxic for us. She went as far as to say that little children should never eat spinach, and the other product she talked about was almonds. Little children shouldn't eat those things. It will be damaging to their growth. They're not going to have access to the calcium that they are looking for. Thank you for sharing that. You're carnivore now. I'm curious how long you've been carnivore. You can let me know if you don't mind. I've been carnivore now since February. Loving it. Good morning, Lori B. This is the first live. I'm so happy to have you here. So happy to have you here. Nice to see you, Garadriel Legends. You're always so pleasant to talk to. So Lori, safer for me to use total carb. I'm highly insulin resistant. Okay. Needed to keep carbs under 10. And I feel like that's the most important thing, is that I found that figuring out that 18 wasn't my number. And because I understand that, or at least that allowed me to understand that getting up to the edge wasn't helping me, because by being up to the edge, then all I did was bring the pain back. And it made me wonder, like, had I been doing 15, because, okay, yeah, sure, 20 is the limit. If I was doing 15 the whole time, would I have just been able to do that, get all the way through without having pain? I wonder about that. I don't know the answer, because that's not how I did my keto lifestyle. But I can tell you that, just like you, Lori, I saw that 18 was where I needed to be. And then I went down to 15 initially, and then I was at 10 for the longest while. Years. I was doing just 10 or less until eventually I just dropped eating those things altogether, because I was like, well, but that's recently. Garjula Legend says, for that cereal, the total carb is 1 serving, which is 1 cup. I'm eating like 5 cups minimum in one sitting. I pass. Yeah, I don't even, honestly, 41 grams, if that comes to be a cup, I'm shocked, because that cereal, well, maybe because it's so super light, but I can totally agree with you that, like, when I actually went to the store when I was an adult to buy bowls and plates and etc., I was shocked to learn what size a cereal bowl actually was. When I saw the little teeny thing that they were calling a cereal bowl, it helped me understand that in our household, we were using soup bowls for our cereal, right? Like, that little bowl was the size bowl that we gave the children. And I'm talking about children. So they were getting that thing full, which you stop and think about is still too much for even them. And those are kids like under the age of like 7, probably. And if you get like, once you get past 7, you can have an adult bowl. Like, when I remember growing up, like basically it was crazy, like how much we were eating. So, hey, Pat, nice that you could make it. Okay, I'm not sure what. James, hello. Nice to meet you. Unless I've met you before, in which case, nice to have you back. But I don't recognize James, but Robert Preston Sr. Carbohydrates are complex sugar. Actually, no, Robert, all carbohydrates are sugars. And like, they're two interchangeable words. And even glucose, which is the simplest of simple sugars, glucose, fructose, lactose, galactose, they are all carbohydrates. So the complexity, now we're talking about complex carbohydrates, which is a category unto itself. And then you'll have like all the carbohydrates that are chained together in some way. So, for example, table sugar, which is sucrose, actually that's a disaccharide, if we're going to be very, very strategic on this. Starches, which is a chain of carbohydrates, would be considered a complex carbohydrate. So like basically, so is fiber, another chain of, so it depends on, if you need to have like multiple, I believe, for them to be called complex. But carbohydrate by itself is actually, any sugar is a carbohydrate. Sort of the same way that any, like a chicken is a bird, a turkey is a bird, pigeon is a bird, like they're like that big genus of birds, but then we have individual kinds. And then you have also the ones that we tend to eat versus the ones that we don't. Although theoretically, we could eat any bird. We could eat eagle if we wanted to, but we don't. So it's like we need to. I hope I made that clear. And I say no carbs, but allow about 20 grams of simple sugars. I hear what you're saying. 20 and my only again going back to what I said 5 seconds ago, when we get up to that 20, and I question, like, for you, simple sugars. So then what are you classifying as simple sugars, by the way? I'm kind of curious. Why not eat only meat, red meat only? So okay, I'm not sure, Preston, Mr. Robert Preston, if you're new here, but we talk all things keto and carnivore. And today's conversation really is more about helping the people who are getting started focus on what kind of carb, so net versus total. However, I'm also open to have the conversation about like only eating red meat, because some people, like in my scenario, can't eat red meat because I have thalassemia, and that would be toxic for me. So I feel like, and I'm totally open to the idea that maybe 10 years from now, 15 years from now, if my thalassemia was somehow caused by some kind of food problem, maybe I'm in a situation where I can eat red meat. Looking forward to try that out down the road at some point. But there's the other element of, could I be one of the people that just happens to have the unlucky scenario where where thalassemia actually is a genetic problem that once is turned on cannot be turned off. I'm going to wait and see what plays out there. My important point to make to you right now is, I think that eating meat only, so meat, fish, poultry, eggs, doing a carnivore style diet only is terrific. But we need to be careful that some people will react to some things. And somebody was talking about this. I want to say it was Kelly Hogan was talking about meat aversion that she had lived. I think it was during her pregnancy, and just all of a sudden seemed to not be able to do red meat, but just briefly. And then it came back, I believe, after the pregnancy that she was able to eat it. All that to say, for each of us, we need to pay attention to our body and then behave accordingly. So I guess now if I reread your other comment, you're saying you say no carbs and allow 20 grams of simple sugars. My problem with that is the simple sugars include things like apples and bananas. And those are the things that are most likely to cause people to chase because they taste sweeter. So a lot of the time, those simple sugars taste so sweet that they cause us to engage that cephalic response to sugar. And now we're chasing, and we don't understand why, because we were under 20. When your mouth tastes sweet and your emotions get involved, because that's a familiar flavor, that's something that I used to comfort myself with. That's right. Like all these, you're watching a movie, you should be eating some M&Ms or whatever, because again, this is what we've been taught. When that gets engaged, we can end up chasing again. So I really would encourage everyone to just be careful with this idea that because it's a simple sugar, it's safer. We need to pay attention to how we specifically are reacting to what we're eating. Through trial and error, I've realized sugar alcohols, keto treats cause bad stomach aches for me. Maybe it's only certain sugars that cause it. I just cut them and stick to carnivore. Chris, I'm glad that you paid attention to your body, because that's what we need to do. I'll tell you that the reason that I was so against medication was exactly that. I was listening to my body. When I was younger, the first scenario that I remember was the iron pills that I was given because I was anemic. thalassemia. They didn't check that, and they gave me iron pills after encouraging my parents to overfeed me red meats, which made me feel ill. When I took the iron pill, what a negative reaction did I have? My mouth tasted funny. I was sick. So I stopped taking the iron pill, and then it went away. And that helped me to see that, first of all, not every medication that they give you is right for you. And I was young at this time. I believe I was under 20 for sure. Somewhere between 17 and 20 when that happened. And I was just like, yeah, I'm not taking that. And which was a fight. And I just covertly stopped taking it because my parents were like, yes, you are. And I just covertly stopped taking it until eventually when I was confident to really just say, no, I'm not taking it. What's the point? We need to listen to our body. So I'm so happy that you did do that. Rachel Germain, I hope I'm saying your name right. I keep my carbs as close to zero total carbs as possible. For some reason, if I allow even veggies, my brain says, oh, I can have some cake, so I have to avoid them all. Yeah, I do believe that depending on how insulin resistant we are, our chasing can start as low as 1 gram of carbs. It's the most interesting thing to me, but I think especially if the carbs that you do let in taste sweet. So another point that I'll make is that, like back when I was eating vegetation, if I ate cashews, they tasted sweet to me. Right away, that helped me to understand that my tastes are changing. My sensitivity to sugar is coming back because these taste sweet. So it's coming back, which this helps us to understand how insensitive we had become because our mouths were constantly being bombarded with sweet flavors. These are important things for us to know, Wellness Warrior, because if we don't fully understand why eating carbohydrates, why eating sugar in general is so problematic, then we think we can go back and forth. That's another thing that drives me crazy is that people will talk about cheat days. We'll talk about taking a break from keto and coming back to it. And I've learned that a lot of the times people that can easily take a break from keto and come back to it, are people who didn't have insulin resistant, so didn't have a metabolic or weight problem when they started keto. A lot of people are just really into fitness and health and were eating healthy at a really young age. So keto at a really young age because they learned about it and recognized how healthy it was. Because of that, I want us to be very careful of the fact that listening to someone when that's their starting point, which I learned this because I was watching someone and that was their starting point. And when I actually went further back on their channel and understood why they started their keto lifestyle and recognized that they never had any, in their own mind, significant challenge to overcome. Their weight was fine, their life was fine, their mental. So even if there was something for them to notice, were they looking for it, first of all? And a lot of the times the answer is no. Can I point out how many people that I speak to who do keto, they lose a little bit of weight, but they have all these other amazing benefits. The mental fog is lifted, the energy they have, all the things, you can list it out. But because they weren't looking for that, they weren't paying attention to that. So they get all these benefits, and as is normal, they get used to them, and then they're not caring about them because the weight on the scale is just, it's not moving, and end up letting go of all those positives that they were getting. Because why? Well, because they don't see the value in keeping going forward because their weight's not moving, and they allow themselves to go back. And then once they touch that food, they're chasing. And of course, the brain fog and the pain and the what come back, and they're like, oh no. But now they can't get back in because when you let go of something that you're hooked on, wellness warrior, and you go back to it, getting off the second time, harder. Getting off the third time, even harder. And the more times you go back and forth, the less likely you're going to be able to stick with it even past a day when you try to go back to the healthy way. Because your brain is grabbing it harder each time. It's important for us to understand that. I heard your insulin actually works harder as your blood sugar goes lower, under 100. I keeping you insulin resistant. I don't understand that. Not true or true? I heard that your insulin actually works harder. So insulin production is about getting sugar out of the blood. So right, and basically insulin helps your body understand what to do with all of the energy that just came in, plus a bunch of other stuff. So it's not just an energy scenario, but insulin's a hormone. Hormones being unregulated, so out of whack with each other, have more than just the impact on what's happening in our blood, although that's huge. Hormones being out of whack with each other means that other hormones are going to be out of whack. So the idea that insulin would work harder is confusing to me because it's a hormone. This much sugar came in, and then my body produces the amount of insulin to match and deal with what came in. If I eat less than 20, then my body should produce that amount. So is the person saying the little bit of insulin that's being produced needs to work harder to, and that's not reality. So I'm confused by this, and I would love to read or see the video where that's being said to understand the context. But what I can tell you is when you eat less sugar, your body has no reason to produce that level of insulin, if that makes sense. So now, there's another thing, though, that I will say. If I have insulin resistance and I have 5 grams of sugar for some reason, and I don't have any protein, and I just have 5 grams of sugar, because I have insulin resistance, my body is going to have a huge reaction to that little bit of sugar. And maybe this is what they're talking about. Why? Because that toxin is coming in, but my system is already in a bad state. So I end up having, and I still need to put this somewhere. So I need a lot of insulin to put that away. Compared to if I don't have insulin resistance at all and I have 5 grams of sugar, my body will produce a normal amount to manage that 5 grams of sugar. So it's going to manage it. It's still more insulin than would have been produced if I would have had 5 grams of protein, like strict protein, no fat or no, right? Or 5 grams of fat. So you always produce more insulin when you intake sugar. That's just the way that it works. That's not a problem. That's not wrong. It's what your body's supposed to do. And I'm adding to that when you're insulin resistant and you eat sugar, yes, your body has a bigger than normal reaction because it has to. But if once you get yourself into a ketogenic state, so let's look at that story for a second. I've been doing keto for, 3 weeks. Well, how many days it take? 5 days. I'm consistent. I'm on target. I'm 5 days in, 6 days in, 7 days in. Then the sugar reaction, the reaction to sugar, how much insulin is produced is going to be a number, right? Based on what you eat. And it's going to be higher than when your body is healthier. So why? Because even though I'm 7 days into my keto journey, and now the right amount of insulin is being produced for the amount of sugar I'm eating, it's still higher than 5 years from now when I've been doing keto consistently for 5 years. My body has healed somewhat and I'm less insulin resistant. Perhaps even no longer insulin. When we get to the part where we're no longer insulin resistant, then my body will create the right amount of insulin. Here's my problem. How long will it take me to get to the place where I'm no longer insulin resistant? So when would it be that my body is completely healed? One of the things that we need to be careful about, and Dr. Lustig helped me to understand this. Insulin resistance happens in all of the cells. What does that mean? That my skin cells can show insulin resistance. My ovaries can show insulin resistance. My blood cells, so all of the cells, if it's a cell, it can be insulin resistant. So even though maybe my skin is looking great and regulated and I'm saying, oh, wow, like this is really working. My body has healed my skin. It doesn't mean that some other part of me internally isn't still insulin resistant. When I eat sugar, especially glucose, goes to every cell of your body, those insulin resistant cells will still produce more, right? So that insulin reaction is still going to be there. We need to understand that piece of the puzzle. I think that might be why they are saying it's working harder, but it's not working harder. It's still working the right way. An insulin resistant cell is reacting appropriately to the insulin around it to the sugar around it because, oh no, the sugar, it's supposed to be coming in, going out, whatever it's supposed to be doing with the sugar, it cannot. More insulin is needed for this process to happen. Whatever that process is going to be. I hope that makes sense. That was a long conversation to get to that answer, but I feel like that's the way that I would interpret that. But I would love, Lori B, if you want to, over in the Wellness Squad, wellnesssquad.org. If you want to send me a message over there, that's where people can message me. That link is in the description below. You can message me and let me know what video you saw that in, because you're not going to be able to put a video up here. It's not going to work. But I would love to see, or if it's an article you're reading, I would love to just look at that a little bit more. So Robert, you said you were 300 pounds, now you're 200, and any type of meat will likely work. Yeah, I think honestly, eat what you like in terms of meats. I think, and eat what you can manage too. I remember learning from Michaela Peterson, like watching her videos. I haven't spoken to her, would love to, but I haven't spoken to her. But I remember from watching her videos, learning that histamines, especially in cured meat, dry cured, especially apparently, but I'm not sure if like even bacon might do this to some people, because I don't know if there's histamines in bacon. But what I learned was that the histamines that are in meats that are too old, so if you cook fresh meat, there won't be histamines, or as many if they start happening right away, I don't know, as when you leave that meat over in the fridge overnight till the next day, or in the fridge overnight for 3 days. So there's something about cooking meat and then leaving it for a long period of time, not frozen, I believe. I believe that makes a difference, that it's not frozen. So one thing that she helped me understand is that some people won't be able to do deli meats, for example. Some people won't be able to do like aged beef and this kind of thing. So I do feel like people need to pay attention after you've eaten. How is the food impacting you? No fruit. Most have been sprayed. Oh yeah, that's another topic we didn't even touch is the glyphosate and all kinds of craziness on our basically all the pesticides that they use. And even when they do things like soap, they say, oh, you can wash it off. But how are we sure that the soap isn't getting into the actual plant? I wouldn't drink soap, so why would I want to be eating it? So I definitely feel that like figuring out the way to be pesticide free when and doing fruits and vegetables is going to be super hard. So being carnivore just makes that whole process of not having to worry about those chemicals much easier. But for those people who are keto and are then therefore needing to worry about those chemicals, what do we do? And I think it's peel your stuff. So, I remember lots of people when I was growing up would peel their apples. I never understood why their apples, their pears, they're like anything that they could peel, they would peel. And now I'm starting to understand a bit better that maybe they were just trying not to eat those chemicals that would be on the outside of the fruit. Now, some people just don't like the skin of fruit, but it might be a way to mitigate some of those toxins. But I don't think we're going to get them all off that way because I do feel like they're going to get into the soil that the plant is growing in, and how can they get in that way? And there's just so many things. Alana A, thank you for the great information, great reasons to track. Thank you for letting me know that this has been helpful. Thanks for the channel and thoughts. No problem, Robert. I love sharing and I love helping people to see wider, look at all the things. I mean, it's part of the reason that I watch so many different doctors and try to just be wide in who I'm consuming, because every person gives us a little bit different information, a little bit different angle, and it's so helpful to have an understanding of why I should be doing what I'm doing. And even just understanding if I shouldn't be doing something, what's the potential damage that I might have lived because I was doing it. Lori B, I need to work on my insulin resistance due to having a severe fatty liver. Fasting 18 hours a day, done eating by 5, under 10 carbs hasn't helped yet. Wearing CGM has helped accountability. Okay, I mean, so if you're doing 18 hours, which probably means you're doing 2 meals, I'm going to guess, or you're having your 18, yeah, so 18.6. So can we get 3 meals in 6 hours? I would doubt it. So you're probably doing 2 meals. Are you having any snacks, Lori? That would be the one thing that I would put in front of you. Because in a 6-hour eating window, if I'm doing 2 meals, chances are very good my carb count, my insulin count is going to be low. Because it should, it's going to go up once and it's going to go up a second time if I'm only doing 2 meals. If you're snacking, okay, great. Thanks for sharing that. No snacks. So if I'm not snacking, then, and I'm still struggling with my insulin, I think I'm still struggling with my insulin because I'm seeing my CGM, and so I'm seeing those numbers. I have 2 things to offer you to think about. We could either take the carbs down even lower. Although, wait, I don't know how long you've been doing this. How long have you been doing this? Could you give me that piece of information? Has it been a month, 2 months, a year, 2 years? Because if it's been a little bit of time, let's say, less than 6 months, I would keep going. 10 grams of carbs or less, 2 meals a day. And if this is really comfortable for you and you could see yourself doing this forever, I'd keep going. It's unrealistic to expect our body to cure what took 20 years to create in 6 months or less. But you should probably be seeing progress. And what I mean by progress, energy improvements, sleeping better, some weight loss after 6 months. Depending on how insulin resistant you are, that could be slower or faster, but some weight loss should have already happened and should still be happening. So a part of accountability is checking in on your weight anywhere from every other week to every once a month. Like anywhere in that range, I think is fine. I wouldn't encourage checking your weight weekly because it's having us focus on the wrong thing. But you do want to know that things are going in the right direction if you have weight to lose. If what you need to do is gain weight, then you want to still be checking, but for that process, that your weight is appropriately going up. Now, if I was going to change something, so if you tell me that you've been doing this for a year or year and a half and you're not seeing weight loss or you're having any issues like that, then if I was going to change something, there's two changes you could make. Change number one is simpler. Oh, I see you answered me. Been wearing CGM both. Sorry, I think it's supposed to be 1 month. Trying to lose about 5 years on keto. Way too long to a story to explain. So 5 years. Okay, so if you're saying it's too long a story to explain, that makes me believe that you've been on and off keto. And if you could just answer yes or no to that. On and off keto might explain why you're struggling. And in which case, again, I would say do keto, do 10 grams, like just keep doing what you're doing, but no more offs. The reason is when you go off keto, all the damage just starts happening again. So I wanted you to think about it like this. If I have a cut on my arm and it's finally starting to heal, and then I bang it on the wall and it opens back up, that's going to be a problem, right? And it's going to be like all gross. And then I'm like, take very good care of it again. And I'm like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. And then, okay, it's starting to heal again. And then somebody steps on my arm. That's a problem. And then, and if I just keep that keeps happening at some point, not only is this cut not healed, it's actually going to start to be problematic. It's going to have like infections and all kinds of things. So we need to understand that when we reintroduce the toxin, we are reintroducing the problem. Our body is going to, again, start to have problems. And thank you for sharing that you did go off at least once, sounds like, but maybe more than once. But so if you've gone off, that's the problem that I see is the on, off, is the damage there. It's starting to heal it up, damage is back, starting to heal it, damage. So we're never really getting to a place where we've got good cleanup. And so again, going back to how long does it take to heal one of these? 20 years. To completely replace myself with new tissue. And that's done slowly over time. But if during the course of that 10 years, you end up bringing back in some damage. So, okay, it's like I'm renovating a house and I start with the bathroom and I get like halfway through the bathroom. We're about to put the backer boards on and I run out of money. And so I reused the old backer boards that have holes in them. We drilled into it, all kind of stuff like when it was put up the first time, but I ran out of money. So I throw that in the wall. And then, the tiles are from somewhere that's not good or whatever. But then, okay, money starts coming in already, but this stuff is already in. It's already installed. Sorry, talking to the wrong camera. This stuff is already installed. And so at that moment, what you need to understand is the rebuild is going. So the bathroom vanity is brand new. The bathroom floors are brand new. Oh, jumped out again. Now the toilet is secondhand. That gets installed. Oh, got back in again. The wall paint is brand new. Like, do you see the problem? If I keep jumping in and out, even though some of the stuff that I did repair was repaired on good quality stuff, when I'm eating poor quality, my body is still tasked with repairing and rebuilding and whatever. And what's happening is that it's trying to keep me healthy. It's trying to rebuild, but what's being built is processed food fueled and rather than good quality food fueled. Those base building blocks from the processed food are not doing you any favors. So I think right? Then this is just me pulling together all the different things I've learned over the years. I think that part of the reason that you might be struggling is because those periods of time, whether there was one really long one or there was a bunch of little ones, and this includes going to a birthday party and having some cake, or that can of Coke you drank to keep yourself awake because you were driving, all these little things that we do that we don't realize put holes in the foundation of what we're trying to accomplish. Because eventually, we are needing to eat properly to build the good version of ourselves. How is my liver, I think you said fatty liver, how is my liver going to heal if the sugar keeps coming in that it is being tasked with solving, by the way? Because when you eat sugar, so I'm talking about table sugar now, table sugar, flour, fruits and vegetables, basically most plants are coming with fructose. When you drink dairy or eat dairy, the sugar in there is galactose. So fructose is 100% metabolized in the liver. Every time we allow plants in, going back to that 10 grams of carbs you're having every day, yes, your liver is still faced with dealing with those fructose molecules because our intestines, if it's working perfectly, which if I've got a lot of damage, likely isn't reality, I know it wasn't for mine, can filter out 5 grams per day. So in your situation, maybe if your intestines were working perfectly, you'd have had to deal with 5 grams of fructose because you're doing under 10, but likely you're having to deal with more than 5. Maybe it's 6, maybe it's 7, maybe it's all 10, depending on how well your intestines can pull out. So are they still working well enough to pull out that fructose? So galactose, which is the sugar in dairy, is 90% metabolized by the liver. Again, important information that we just are not told about. So when you're doing anything that has galactose in it, now alcohol, again, 90% metabolized in the liver, 10% in the brain. So even worse, right? Because it's going to cause brain problems. So those are the ones I know about, Wellness Warrior. Can you imagine that there are probably others that I don't know about? But my guess is most sugars that we would start labeling off, like, I know fructose, galactose. I don't know what other oses could be combined with glucose, or even can there be other oses combined with fructose and galactose that we would be able to ingest? I don't know. But these oses that were not explained how they impact our health are impacting our health. Every single time that you have any of these things, your liver is being taxed, right? Now, if I'm perfectly healthy, no mental health, no physical health, no weight issues, if my body is functioning like it did out the womb, then I'm going to manage these things pretty okay. But do you always have that question? Do I really want to be managing, or do I want to be thriving? Wellness Warrior, let me just get this off the screen for a second. The reason that I love this t-shirt that I had made is because it talks about the fact that nightshades were ruining my life. They weren't just a fun thing that I was eating. They were ruining my life. They were causing me to feel horrible, and I was fully unaware. Why? Because the sugar was making me feel so much worse that I didn't even know the huge impact nightshades were having on me until I took the sugar out of my diet. What's impacting you, right? And sometimes these things that are impacting us are so ever present, which could be your story, Lori. Fructose, every fruit, every vegetable has some level of fructose. So as you're eating, you might not notice the difference because there's always that trickle of fructose coming in. But what would happen if you did? So my next suggestion would be carnivore. Just took that fructose possibility out altogether. I'm going to point something out. Spices are plants. So in your case, and I don't say this very often, but if I was you, I probably would be just going straight carnivore, salt only, to see how does that function for me? Because maybe I get some results by next year, right? We are October 2024. Would you be happy if by October 2025, there was significant improvement, not only in weight, although I know often that's what we end up talking about, but what if you had improvement in the markers for your liver and internal organs? So it's something to think about. I know for sure I'd be thinking about it. I mean, I'm doing carnivore right now from a position that everything felt fine. And I went carnivore because I want my body to heal, and I want it to heal as quickly as it can do it. I'm willing to not eat junk to make that happen. Because in my mind now, I keep saying it, meat, fish, poultry, eggs, that is food. Everything else we put on our plate is for fun. So how much fun are you putting on your plate is the big question. I'm encouraging you not to put too much. And if it was, like I said, if it was me, if you did carnivore 2 meals a day, does that keep it reasonable? Does it keep it easy for you? Does it help you to stay on track? That would still cause insulin rises because protein and fat cause insulin rises, but it would probably be the healthiest rise. Also, by the way, can I just verify with you that you're eating healthy fats? So no seed oils at all, especially if you're trying to save your liver and trying to solve insulin resistance at the same time. I learned in the last year that seed oils actually contribute to insulin resistance. That part of the story I didn't know. I knew that they were toxic and we shouldn't have them because of their toxicity. I just didn't know that they actually contribute to insulin resistance. So very interesting learnings from multiple doctors. Dr. Nobe especially really pointed that, like, helped. And Dr. Boz. Dr. Boz? Yeah. Bosworth. Also helped me too, my cheat sheet, so I don't forget the names of doctors that have helped me. So thanks for the explanation on insulin resistance, making more sense now. I felt like I was so convoluted, but if it helps you, terrific. Sometimes I try to say something as simple as possible and I end up making it more complicated, even in my own head. I believe that there is a form of ketonic diabetes, look this up, and also a thing called ketoacidosis, which is poisonous again. Look this up. So ketoacidosis usually happens in type 1 diabetics, or in scenarios where you would be taking exogenous ketones, another place where I could see that happening. I'm not sure if there's another scenario that could make that happen, but the outcome or the problem is so in a type 1 diabetic, because they don't have an ability to make insulin, their body cannot use the glucose and any of the sugars that are coming in. It can't even store them away as fat. Their body ends up prioritizing making ketones to keep them moving forward, but having too many ketones in your blood is actually also, that's what ketoacidosis is when you have an extremely excessive amount of ketones in your blood. But to get to those levels, from what I understood from all the doctors who have spoken about it, and they spoke about it to explain away, because people will try to use ketoacidosis and this ketonic diabetes that you're talking about as a reason why keto is bad, and you're gonna have it's gonna maybe that's where that 100%, like, it's gonna work too much if you're under 100 grams. Maybe that's where that silliness is coming from. Okay, thank you, Robert, for pointing that out. I love that. I love when we can help each other to remember stuff. Yeah, but that, according to those doctors, if you're eating healthy keto and you're not adding exogenous ketones, which is part of the reason that I've always encouraged people, let your ketones be made by your body. First of all, as Dr. Barry pointed out, if you're taking exogenous ketones and still eating carbohydrates, you are not in a ketogenic state. You're just taking exogenous ketones. Being in a ketogenic state means that your body is producing the ketones that you are using, and that your body is predominantly functioning on ketones. Not that there aren't carbs, because there are always carbs. Even when we are carb burners, there are ketones. We always have both. We always have the ability to go back and forth, which is another reason that it frustrates me when people are talking about metabolic flexibility and they say it as if we need to get out of a ketogenic state to have it. That's not true. We are always metabolically flexible. That never goes away. It's what's predominant. Sometimes carbohydrate use is predominant, which is what we don't want. And then we have the times where we are able to get back to our natural state where ketones are predominant. There's a video by Dr. Nadir Ali where he explained that so beautifully. And he was showing this research that was done. And what they were able to show is that when you are producing ketones at a minimal level, your body seems to your brain will get them, and like it's their priority given to the brain. But as you increase in ketones, even more of that priority goes to the brain, which is very interesting, because you would think if our brain is meant to function on sugar, that it would be evenly distributed across the body, or even that the body would get more and the brain would keep getting that little bit that it was getting. But no, even more upregulated to give the brain more ketones. So I just thought that was such a great explanation / help me understand that your entire body functions better on ketones, that your muscles store glycogen smartly because they do quick actions. Your brain is always working. Our brain doesn't rest. Like, even when we're sleeping, your brain is coordinating your heart and your movements. Your brain keeps you moving so you don't, your brain is always making sure that you are good. So it's always on, and so therefore needs a lot of energy. So I just love that he explained that. And the ketoacidosis thing, yes, it's you would have to be so overboard. It's hard for a regular person eating regular food without any supplements and without being a type 1 diabetic to put themselves in that situation. Is it worth trying to convince a vegan friend that keto carnivore is optimal? They tell me red meat causes cancer, or should I let them find the truth themselves? I don't think, Chris, that you will likely change that conversation. I think what will happen is that, especially if the person is vegan, eventually they're going to have health issues. And perhaps they find out that the reason they're having that health issue is because their body needs animal protein. If you want them to understand this, I would probably point them toward Dr. Lehman. He explains it really well in multiple interviews that he has done, where he points out that, first of all, we are under eating protein every single day. That's just reality. But second of all, he points out that plants are only able to give us 40 to 50% of the amino acids that we need. And so they're not ideal. But then we add to that, if the person is interested in being educated and not just trying to focus on a a staunch, like, this is what it is because I believe it to be so kind of scenario, if they're open to be educated, then I would also have them read Georgia Eads' book, because she does talk about the fact that based on the research, if you could only afford to have one type of food ever again moving forward, what you should have is animal food. That's what she said in the book. A very clear statement that animal food is what a person should eat if they can only eat one thing. So not plants. Even though plants would give you more variety. All right? Animal food, you're eating 4 things. Meat, fish, poultry, eggs. It's 4 things. Still, she's pointing us there. So you said, consistency for me is going to be key. I think you have a video on that. I probably do. Being diagnosed with severe fatty liver has highly motivated me. Okay. It's unfortunate that we need to be diagnosed with something to be to get motivated. However, a lot of us, this is what happened. It happened to me. I was the same way when my hip stopped working for me and they were telling me surgery was in my future. Nope, that was the motivation. No, it wasn't motivation though. It was inspiration to find an alternative solution. And I hope that you feel inspired to stick to eating healthy, because consistency is key. What you want to do is eat food every day. And as we've defined here, right? Food is meat, fish, poultry, eggs. If you keep allowing yourself to eat for fun, any plant, and that dairy could be a fun thing for you. If you're allowing yourself to do that, you're going to struggle, especially knowing that you have a liver issue, and fructose and galactose and alcohol, all of those 3 things mostly and ultimately all metabolized in the liver. Hello, Marina Silva from sunny Florida. Nice to have you here. As you may know, we are preparing for Hurricane Milton. Any ideas on healthy food options during a hurricane? Assuming our power will be out, I won't be able to eat my typical. What I would encourage you to think about, and normally I wouldn't say this, but I'm going to say this. So there's 2 things. If you have a barbecue, and a safe place to be in, like for example, a garage that might function, I probably would move my barbecue to my garage and I would cook my meat there. If you, my parents have like a camp stove. So I would load up on propane for the barbecue and the thing. If you even have access to it, because I know it's been kind of crazy over there. So if you can do that, but the other thing that I will say is if you don't have the ability to cook, so neither of those 2 options are available to you, then the third option would be canned meats. I would, and fish, like I would get canned meats and fish. And for this short period of time, so if you think that this storm will last more than 2 weeks, I would do that. If it was me and it was a storm and I thought like 3-4 days from now it'll be okay, I probably would just fast before eating canned meats, but I would have them available. Why? Because some food with plastic in it, because that's what you're doing when you're eating canned meats, right? So let's be honest with ourselves. Those microplastics, says the lining of aluminum tins have to be plastic or the aluminum would kill us. Those microplastics are going to be less harmful than not eating at all. And that's the choice I'm making there. Another option you have is if you have electricity right now and you have a freezer, I would pre-cook as much meat as you think you'll need, maybe a little bit more, put it in the freezer, and then I would try to slowly defrost it. So, right, like I would, and once it's defrosted, just eat it right away. Because it's pre-cooked. Like, but I don't know, and again, if you pre-cook it and you slowly defrost it in a cooler of some kind so that it doesn't just turn to defrost right away. But you're also looking at trying to keep everything from spoiling, right? Because this is part of the thing that's so interesting about stuff that we can keep for emergencies for years, is that why don't they spoil? So all the chemicals that they have on them. Another thing that you could do, since you do eat meat, and it's not ideal, but again, we're talking about eat something or starve, dried meats. So all kinds of jerky. There's chicken, beef, pork, and fish jerky. So that might be another option. I know Costco carries a lot of jerkies. Again, you're in Florida, so I'm not sure if you even have access to stores and whatnot. But if you have access to stores, that's probably what I would do. A lot of the time, our fridges and freezers stay working for extended, like your meat won't defrost immediately, but you don't want to be opening that thing all the time either, because the more you open it, the faster it's going to defrost. And the same thing for your fridge. It'll stay cold for a while. So, and especially if you're putting frozen things in there to defrost. So, I mean, these are things that we're doing because we're desperate. So I don't know that you'll be out of electricity for that long, but maybe you will. I have no clue. I saw some footage recently and it looked pretty bad, but at the same time, we've had so many hurricanes and tornadoes and problems across the world that we've gotten really good at repairing things quickly. So it depends. If you think it'll be less than a week, if I thought it would be less than a week, I wouldn't worry about it. I'd probably have a few cans of tuna or chicken that I could eat. Maybe some pepperoni sticks, that kind of stuff, just in case I got hungry. But I would try my best to wait it out and wait for a real meal. I hope that was helpful. And I did see that you eat mostly meat, poultry, and eggs. So okay, so you did answer that part. Kerrygold butter, olive oil. I would be happy to feel healthy. I will think heavily on that. Okay. And you're thinking heavily on 100% carnivore. Yeah, I honestly feel like that might be part of the answer. We'll see though. Thank you again. Meat only for me. Ketosis by choice, but nothing else but meat and fat associated. So no other impact. Okay, so you're not using spices. Okay, again, I think it's the best thing. Like, I'll be honest with you, I'm so happy I took the spices out of my diet. Of course, when you eat out, you can't always guarantee you're not getting a little bit of spice. So that's one of the reasons that we don't eat out very often. But taking those spices out from home, the difference in feeling good is it's really good. It's just, yeah. So Dr. Chafee was actually the one that encouraged me to take that final step to say, okay, I'm gonna do carnivore. And how he did it was he said that last 5% is so huge. And I remembered that because when Pat was trying to do keto, he kind of slowly removed things. That last little thing that he still had left, right? But I think it was bread. Like that last little bit that he just letting that go was so hard for him. And so when Dr. Chafee said that to me, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm just like, I'm not going to do slow spices. I'm just going to carnivore, salt. Let's see how this tastes. To my surprise, it tasted good. So all those years of doing keto helped that it tasted great. Not even just good. It tasted great. I was so happy that I did it because I didn't know meat could taste so good. And it does. Are the spokesmodels that claim keto causes ketoacidosis fools parroting a lie or liars programming fools? Oh, I don't know, Mandel, but yeah, it's hard. Seems like they ought to know better. No, thank you. Tampa is looking at a category 5. Oh, okay. Yeah, I feel like the safest thing is the canned stuff. But again, it depends on how much access you have to a camp stove or a barbecue, or like how big your freezer is even. Because if you only have a small freezer and you open it, like the cold is going to come out so much faster than when you have those big deep freezers where everything is frozen. There's so much cold in there that, like that cooked food, like moving a few of them so into the fridge and letting them slowly but quickly defrost. It's like you have to kind of play that because you don't want them defrosting for so long that something can grow, but you want them defrosting fast. You know what I mean? So it's just figuring that out if you decide to go with pre-cooking the food and then popping it in the freezer. I probably would do the cans myself. Mandel's going to answer. I keep jugs of water in my freezer. Power was out 3 days here from Helen. Fridge stayed cold. Crisco burns great. Can be a long-lasting canned heat to keep a meat soup on simmer, which keeps it safe. Oh, interesting. So you use the Crisco like burning it to. Oh, that's interesting. I never would have thought of that. I'm too chicken to do that because I would be afraid of but it's Crisco. Could it have fumes that are toxic? I don't know. But thank you for that tip though, Mandel, because I think it's an interesting one. So I feel like the consensus is canned stuff or try to cook something, and pre-cooking the meat, maybe not. I'm not sure. Like that one makes me nervous now as I'm saying it more and more. I probably would just do the canned stuff or cook over a barbecue. I wish you luck. I hope that since it hasn't hit yet, that maybe you do have the opportunity to go out and get some propane if you're missing any for your hookups. Hi, Mike Jr. Your live chat has got to be the best moment of my YouTube experience. Forever grateful for your service and advice. Thank you. Oh, I really appreciate that. My goal is to be helpful to you guys. As I said earlier, every Monday I'm here because I want to share. I want you guys to eat on plan and reach your goals. And so I'm more than happy to share what I know, because that's the point of doing this. So thank you, Mike. If there's any more questions, quick, or if you want to say goodbye to each other, I'm going to be jumping out in a minute. Feeling a little thirsty. So this was a good conversation. Crisco and vegetable oils have many excellent uses. Just don't eat it. Vegetable oil works great for chain oil in your chainsaw whenever you're clearing debris. Again, love it. Thank you so much. Well, this was an amazing conversation, Wellness Warriors. Super happy that you were able to be here with me. Love talking to you guys. Next Monday, I'm going to have a new topic. And if there's something that you want me to talk about, please put it in the comments, not in the chat, because I'm going to close this in a second, but put it in the comments so that I can take a look. And if there's something that would help you next Monday, I'm more than willing to take a look and see what we can have a talk about. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.